G'day, this is Fiona Brown with an instructional series video, and today we are using Adobe Illustrator to create a musical note icon from scratch. The first thing I want us to do is to make sure that we have the same palette arrangement in Adobe Illustrator. So let's go up to Window and down to Workspace, and I want you to check that you have Essentials turned on. I also want you to click Reset Essentials just in case any changes have been made to Essentials, and it will set it back to the one that comes with Adobe Illustrator. Okay, time to start a new document. Let's go File, New. As you can see, this is set up at the moment for a print document of A4 proportions. I want to create an icon for the web, so I'm going to change my units to pixels. And I'm going to create our icon 500 by 500 pixels. That's a bit large for an icon, but we can always scale a graphic down better than we can scale it up. And I'm going to give a name to this icon and call it music note and go OK. There you go, we have an empty document. The first thing that we're going to do is create a dark rectangle. Grab your rectangle tool, which is here on the tools bar. Click on the top left, drag down towards the bottom right. If you hold the Shift key, it will constrain it to a square. Now we have a rectangle, and the attributes of this rectangle is that it has a white fill and a black stroke. I'm going to click on this little toggle which swaps the fill and the stroke, and I now have a dark fill and a white stroke. Click on the stroke icon to bring it to the front, and we're going to click this swatch down here, None, so that we have no stroke. Click on the fill swatch to bring it to the front, and I'm actually going to change this to another color, to 181818, which is a very dark grey. There we go. So now we have our dark background for our icon. I'm going to come into where it says layer 1, double click and change this name of this layer to dark background. I like to name my layers as soon as I can, or as soon as I remember to, because I do tend to get a number of layers stacked up on top of each other, and I find it much easier if there is a description of what each layer represents. Okay, I'm going to lock this layer. This will mean that I can't accidentally select it. You'll see the icons changed, saying that I can't compose something on that layer. And then I'm going to create a new layer by clicking the Create New Layer icon, and here is layer 2. Now I'm going to create a reddy pink circle as the next step of our icon. I'm going to come back up to the rectangle tool, click, hold, access the submenu, come down to the ellipse tool. If I just started drawing at the moment, I would get a dark ellipse, but I would actually like this to be a reddish pink colour. So I'm going to double click on the fill, and I'm going to type in EA0055. That's given me a red. Now I'm going to click on the top left, drag down, hold my Shift key down to constrain it, and let go on the bottom. This circle is obviously larger than I require, so I'm going to right click while I've still got it selected and go to Transform and Scale, and I want you to type in Uniform 80%. As you can see, if we preview that, it's brought it down to a reasonable size. I'm going to go OK. Now we have our red circle, and I'm going to change the name of that layer to red circle and lock it as I did before with a dark background. Time to create our quaver. Let's create a new layer. I still have the ellipse tool selected, but I'm going to change my fill by an FF. There we go. And I'm going to start by creating an ellipse, coming to the corner of the ellipse, and it will allow me to rotate it slightly. Okay, with my ellipse selected, I'm going to go edit, copy, edit, paste, and I have a second copy. I now have the ellipses of my quaver. The final thing I'm going to do is create the stem that joins these two together. Okay, and with nothing selected, I'm now going to go up to the pen tool, and that will let me create the stem of my quaver as one line with multiple parts to it. I don't want this to have a white fill and no stroke. I'm actually going to toggle that so we have no fill and a white stroke. Before I draw that, I'm going to come across to the stroke width and change that down to 16 points. I want a nice thick stem on my quaver. Clicking somewhere towards the right of my original ellipse, I'm going to click. I'm going to move up, hold down the shift key to constrain it to draw vertically, and there we have the first arm. I'm going to move to the right, slightly up, click again. I'm just doing this by eye. I'm not particularly worried about it being too accurate at the moment. Then I'm going to come down, hold the shift key to constrain, and there is my last part of my stem. Then I'm going to click the selection tool. As you can see, my second ellipse just needs to be moved a little bit. That's my first. There we go. That will do. I now have a white quaver. I'm going to click on the layers panel and rename my layer white quaver. Okay, it's time to create the shadow for our quaver icon. I'm going to create the shadow based on the white quaver. So I'm going to create a copy of white quaver by clicking on it and dragging down to the create new layer icon and letting go. This creates a new layer with the contents of the one that I dragged down. It looks like it's blank, but that's just because it's a white object that we're working with. I'm going to unlock and change the name of the copy to shadow. Then I'm going to move the shadow underneath the white quaver. Next, what I need to do is select my quaver, and I'm going to go up to Effect, Distort and Transform, and choose Transform. I'm going to cast a shadow from the quaver down towards the bottom right of the icon by using the Move tool. I'm going to move by about 0.5 pixels horizontally and vertically and make a number of copies. If I just guess that I might need 400 copies, you'll see that I haven't quite gone far enough. So I'm going to keep changing this number until I can toggle the preview and see that it completely covers that bottom right corner. There we go. Okay, now my shadow is white. I'm coming across to the fill and the stroke. At the moment, you can see the fill and the stroke have question marks. This is because our quaver is made up of multiple components with different fill and strokes applied to them. The ellipses are a white fill with no stroke, and the stem of the quaver is a white stroke with no fill. And so it's representing that there are multiple fills and strokes applied by giving you the question mark. I'm going to click Default Fill and Stroke, toggle it so that the fill is black, bring the stroke to the front and apply None. And that gives me the basis of my shadow. Now you can see that my shadow extends past the edge of my icon, and I want to constrain it to within the icon. So what I'm going to do now is create a clipping mask. I'm going to click on the rectangle tool, and I want this rectangle to have no fill and no stroke because it's not going to be seen, it's just going to be used to cut the shadow at the right point. I've clicked at the top left, held down the constrain tool and gone down to the bottom right. Because I created that secondly, it's in front of my shadow. Now I'm going to marquee and select both, right click and go Make Clipping Mask, and my shadow is nicely cut off. The last thing that I need to do with my shadows selected is to go to the appearance and change the opacity to a value that I think makes a nice looking shadow. I'm going to choose about 85% this time. And there you have it. I have a musical note icon. I'm going to make sure that I save my changes. And I'm also going to make sure that I save as other file types. I'm going to save as an SVG, which you can see I've already done here. That gives me a vector version of the file. And I'm going to export as a PNG, which I've done here. And that gives me a raster version. So I have a lot of scope for using in different applications. Well, thanks, and look out for some of my other videos in my instructional series. This has been Fiona Brown.